Hey guys, Super Dave here. We're ready for another video. We're going to have a little fun with this video. I'm going to tell 10 stories about tenants that I've dealt with over my 30 years. Now, I predominantly deal with college students. So this is going to be fun to listen to, and at the same time, I think you're going to learn some lessons from my mishaps and my crazy stories so you can become a better landlord yourself. Okay, story number one. In the wintertime, I go by and check on my rentals. I tell my tenants all the time, keep the heat on 50 in the wintertime so the pipes don't freeze. It's in their lease. I remind them before they go on break, and I tell them about it all the time. So I walked into my house and I could hear a hissing sound of water, spewing water from one of the bathrooms. So I go in and the heat is completely off in the entire house. The house is frozen, I got busted pipes, and there's this much water in the basement. It was a crazy scene. I've never seen anything like it, honestly. It's the biggest flood I've ever seen in one of my rentals. And I called up my tenants, they were all home on break, and I said, hey guys, we got a problem up here. We got a huge flood in the basement, and you're gonna have to move out for a little bit while I fix this. I'm not gonna be mad, I'm not gonna be upset, but you guys made a huge mistake here. You wrecked the house, and now I'm gonna fix it for you. But you just have to be patient and work with me. I have homeowners insurance that covered it, and I did a $35,000 renovation to the house. Well, the guys who did the damage to my house ended up suing me, and they came after me in court and said they had the heat on and I had a defective house, and just wasn't true. They were lying. I was telling the truth, but I had to go through court. I had to battle these guys and fight my way through it. So that's story number one. Number two. This happened 2 weeks ago in one of my rentals. My property manager went inside to check on this house. A girl has been living there for 2 years. She's got 3 pets, and she lives in a 2-bedroom house that I own. Well, when my property manager walked inside, it was one of the worst scenes she had ever seen in a rental house. There were dead animals, it was just a wreck, there was trash piled up, one of the craziest things she'd ever seen. And the lesson you can learn from here is you've got to stay calm, you can't get mad at people, people make mistakes, and so we evicted her, we had it professionally cleaned, and we're in the process of getting new tenants right now. But it was the worst case scenario I have ever seen and my property manager had ever seen inside an apartment. This girl was actually sleeping and living inside the apartment with dead animals all around her and trash piled up on the walls. But it's all been cleaned up. She's out of there, and I'm looking for a new tenant. And a way to prevent this from happening to you is try to visit your properties as much as possible. You don't want to bug your tenants, but this is a case where I hadn't looked at the house in a long time. She'd been there for 2 years. And the lesson here is check on your properties, check on your tenants, and don't let things get too far away from you. Story number 3, this happened a week ago. I have a few guys living in a rental house near the campus, and they came down the hill in their car and ran into the side of my house and knocked one of the walls out. Well, when I first looked at it, it looked really bad. And the guy who did it felt really bad. He thought he had ruined my house. And the lesson here is don't panic. Look at the problem, find the solution, and just fix it. I had my handyman go over there, and within 1 hour, he re-secured the wall, made everything good again, and everything was fine. So the lesson here is right when you see the damage and you see a house and come down a hill and hit your property, don't get upset. Don't get too mad. Find the solution, work your way through it, fix it, and move on. Story number 4 is a 4-bedroom house I have near the campus. And what happened here is there was a dad who was trying to get his daughter out of the lease. He wanted her to go home for the summer, but she was in a lease for that summer. And he called me. He was trying to get her out of the lease. And usually when that happens, I try to work with people and I try to be reasonable. And I told him if you find a subleaser to take her place, then she can get out of the lease. Well, he didn't want to go through that effort. He came up to the house walked through and saw a wire down in the basement near some water. Well, that was enough. He called every town official that he could. He actually got my house condemned. He shut the house down. Everybody had to move out. And I guess the lesson here is you still have to stay calm. You can't get mad at people. This guy made a mistake. It was very obvious, but I didn't get upset. I let everybody move out. I ran an ad. I put new people in, and I just moved on. Story number 5 is I had a 5-bedroom house, and for some reason, one of my tenants did not want me to rent it for the next year. He didn't want it for himself, but he was going to make life difficult for me. So every time I came by to show the house, every time I walked in the door. And he had trash piled everywhere, but I fought my way through it. I just kept showing the house. And again, the general theme here is he's young, he's immature, and I didn't get upset. I didn't get mad. I just tried to communicate with him. I kept working hard. I found new tenants. He's in the past, and now I have new people living in the house. Story number 6 is I had a basement in one of my houses. Well, I came by to look at it, and nobody lived down there. It was a storage area, but the walls were littered in graffiti. And this was new. This had just happened while these tenants were living there. Well, I walked around and looked, and I saw a kid's name on the wall. And it was an odd name. It said Ollie in graffiti on the wall. And guess what? That was one of my tenants. So I went upstairs and I said, "Hey guys, who's doing all this graffiti on the walls downstairs?" And they all shrugged their shoulders, didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, "You guys had to do that graffiti on the wall." They denied it and they denied it. So I finally pulled my card out and I pointed to the one kid. I said, "Hey Ollie, if you didn't do it, why is your name on the wall?" And he finally admitted it, and I made him paint all the walls white, and I moved on. So story number 7 is, I had a girl call me up, and there were 3 girls living in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that I owned. Well, she was irate. She kept telling me, people are peeping in my windows. People are around the house every night, and she didn't feel safe and she didn't feel secure. Well, I was concerned, so I called the police. I told them to keep an eye on the house. Well, then she called another time and said these people had turtle heads. Now, this is getting weird. I was like, what is going on here? So I went and talked to the other 2 roommates, and they said she eats mushrooms all the time. She's hallucinating, she's making it up, and none of it was real. So obviously that was an easy fix. I went and talked to her, she admitted her mistakes, and we moved on. So story number 8 is, I had a friend of mine call and said, "Hey David, I was out late last night and I drove past one of your rental properties." And he said there were 35 people on the roof of the house drinking beer and partying. Wow, that's a problem. This is a 2-story house, and these kids were up on the roof drinking beer and partying. Well, this is the time you're glad you have good insurance, you got good liability insurance, and you have to educate people. So I went over to the house, I sat everybody down, and I said, "Look, I have proof of this. My friend took a picture of everybody up there. I'm not going to report anybody. I'm not going to get you in trouble, but this can never happen again." And it goes back to your lease also. I always write in my lease items like, "Don't get on the roof." And then when something like that happens, I have written proof that they're breaking the rules in my lease. So the lesson here is, again, you can't get worked up, you can't get mad, but you've got to fix the problem. You have to address it. I went to the house. I lined everybody up. I talked to them face to face and let them know this is not right. Somebody could get hurt, somebody could die, and everybody needs to be careful and never do it again. Story number 9 is, I had a group of guys living in a 5-bedroom house that I owned. They called one morning and said, "We have got a flood over over here. There's water all over the basement floor. So I went over to the house. I started looking around. When you go to look for leaks, you go to the kitchens and the bathrooms because that is where the water is. I noticed all the water was centered in the middle of the room and I couldn't figure it out. So I kept looking and I realized that the ice bags from their kegs had melted out and water had gotten all over the floor. So I pulled all the guys out and I said, guys, it's not me, it's you. Your kegs are leaking here and it's your problem, not mine. They just shut their doors and went back to bed. Number 10 is, I bought a 31 unit apartment building and there will be videos about that you'll see. Well, I was at the property, I was trying to rent the units, and I had a lot of older tenants in the building who didn't want to leave. And I had a model unit where I was trying to bring new tenants in and show the property and try to get leases and get a whole new set of people in the building. Well, this one lady did not like what I was doing. Every time she saw my car pull up, every time she saw me meeting with a potential tenant, she'd come out of her room with a broomstick and a big old bra on the end. And she'd run around the parking lot screaming and yelling and say, don't rent from this guy, and acting all crazy. Well, I got through it. I managed to get through that problem. I rented the whole building. She moved on, I moved on, and everything's okay. And the reason I told you these 10 crazy stories is so you can learn from it. The most important thing is when you have a problem, stay calm, don't get upset, and work your way through the problem. And it's also important to have good insurance, have good liability insurance to protect yourself. And the whole theme here is to stay calm. If you're going to own real estate, you're going to have problems. Things are going to break. Things are going to leak. All you have to do is stay calm. You fix it and you move on. So I hope you enjoyed my 10 stories. I know I did. Remember to subscribe to my channel. Hit the thumbs up button if you like what you're hearing. Turn on the notification bell so you know when I'm doing my next video. And I really appreciate it. Yeah, when she said turtle heads, I was like, we got a problem here.